Hi, I'm Shay.
And I'm Ken.
And we're from the Groundworker Training Program. Today we will cover how to inspect, coil, and store ropes and single-eye slings. This video does not cover all aspects of rope handling and is rather a general guide. Always make sure you are following local legislation and the owner's manual. If you have any questions, ask your instructors or your supervisor.
These ropes are amazing tools, and if used right, they can last a long time. But we want to be inspecting these before, during, and after each use. When we look at this rope, we can break it down into filaments here. So we see on this rope we have a little bit of abrasion, and when we're looking at this abrasion, what we want to look at here is these little tiny fibers here. So these little tiny fibers here are called filaments, and these filaments will bundle together to create the strands. So on this rope, I'm holding this white rope here. This is called a 12-strand rope. It has 12 strands that are woven together. So by this, what we mean by this is we have a machine, 12 machines that will weave this together. Here we have a higher density of filament damage. So when we really break this down, this is probably about maybe a quarter fiber tear. But this rope here is what's called a double braid. It's a rope in a rope. 50% of the strength is in the core and 50% is in the sheath. So when we really look at this damage here, yes, it stands out. We definitely want to monitor that and note it, but that definitely would not be retirement for that because it doesn't have other contributing factors such as melting or charring on the rope, embedded particles. What embedded particles do, if you get sand and things like that in the rope, they can start to wear away at the inside of that rope. Other things to look for on a rope, sometimes with splices, such as on this rope here, we have a buried Bremel. So this splice is buried into itself right here. And where this fiber comes out is right here, this part right here. So again, this splice is buried into itself, and then this is just the end poking out. And we know that that's the end because when we pull this, we can continue to pull that. So this is just that tail sticking out. To fix that, we would just milk that rope through, just like this, and then just tuck that tail in. Whereas on this rope, and this one broke my heart, we sacrificed it for the name of science, so we took some hand pruners here, and we actually cut one of these strands. So again, this being a 12-strand rope, we cut about half of that strand. So when we're looking at this rope here, and as far as retirement, as a general statement, about 20% wear, and we would factor in fiber tears, melting, things like that, and accumulate that to our 20%. But this really, half of a fiber tear on a 12-strand rope, I personally wouldn't retire this, but I would definitely make a note in our logbook and absolutely point this out to your supervisor and instructor.
Other things that you'd want to look for are discoloration and UV degradation. The sun is not good for ropes. So originally this rope would have been a brighter red color and now it's pink. That's not a cause for retirement of the rope yet. If this rope began to look white like this one, you would want to consider retiring it. That's too much discoloration. Discoloration can also show you where the rope has gotten dirty. If there are too many embedded bits of dirt and things in the rope, it won't work properly and needs to be cleaned. Another thing that you want to look for is inconsistency in diameter. So like Ken said, there is a sheath on this rope with a core inside, and the sheath and the core are 50% each of the strength of this rope. So if there's inconsistencies in the diameter, either bunches or flat spots, those would be weaknesses in the rope, and you would want to consider either cutting off those sections or retiring the rope.
These are just some of the things that you'll look for, again, before, during, and after each use with the rope.
The first way to store a rope is to use a rope bag. I like to put the rope over my shoulder so that I can cleanly put the rope in the bag. Make sure you're not getting your hair caught in it, as the friction of the rope going over your shoulder can cut your hair. As I'm putting it in the rope bag, I'm inspecting it to look for any damage, discoloration, inconsistencies in diameter, any cuts or abrasions, and I evenly put the rope into the bag like so. Again, always looking for any kind of damage that could have been done to the rope, because if I find any, I need to tell my supervisor or retire the rope. Feeding it in nice and evenly will help the rope come out nicely again at the end next time that you use it. If your rope is wet, you don't want to put it back into a rope bag, but instead bring it to the shop and hang it up so that it can dry. This rope looks pretty good so far, doesn't it, Ken?
Yeah, it does look good.
What's this? I've found some cuts and abrasion, and it looks like there's 3 strands that are cut, so that's over 20%.
Think we need to retire it?
I don't think we need to retire it, Ken. I think we can cut it off right here and keep the rest of the rope. Could you hold this for me?
Sure.
So, to fix a rope that has a bit of abrasion or cuts at the end like this, you'd want to first use some electrical tape so that after you cut it, the rope isn't going to unravel. And then cut it a few inches away from the rope. Thank you, Ken. And now, all of that damage is gone and it is safe to use. At the end, I like to tie off the tip of the rope with a figure 8 so that you can always find the end next time that you are ready to use it. And then we close the bag just like that. Now, if we didn't tape off the end of that rope, it would be like tying a braid in your hair with no ponytail holder. It would all come undone like that. Look at those frays versus a nice, neat end to the rope, like on this taped one. And that is how to put a rope in a rope bag.
Another way to store your rope at the end of the day is to coil it. This works especially well if your rope is wet and needs to dry out a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab about a half arm length on our working end or tail of our rope. And I like to do full arm spans with this rope. That way I have consistent loop lengths. Here I'm going to grab the rope, the bite of the rope with the index finger and thumb. And when I bring that to my right hand, I'm actually going to spin it. So here, coming in here, I'm going to give that little twist, and I'm going to lay it starting from my thumb going towards my fingertips. This way the rope is in order, and we're not going to be tangled up when we bring it back in. So you can see you can have a nice consistent rope length if you're doing your arm span every time. So I'm about 6 feet tall. So I'm going to do that full arm span as I come in. And again, laying that rope down in order from my thumb going towards my fingertips. This hand here collects that bundle and holds it together. So here I'm actually slightly compressing my right hand as I reach out, spreading out my arm width there and bringing that rope in. So it's a matter of my right hand clamping the rope. So here, when you ever run into this situation, it's always slip knots. So taking that bundle off there just freed up all that rope there. So coming in here, again spinning it, putting the rope in order, clamping my right hand to hold the rope, then opening my right hand up to receive the rope. Nice lengths. That spin gets rid of those twists. And also, I'm also getting rid of these hockles as I go. So hockle is a twist in the rope, and that can come and jam up against your hand if you're trying to run the rope through your hands, say in a device like the Porter Wrap or something like that. So coming to the end of the rope, so I have about 6 feet of rope left here. And what I'm going to do here is, I'll give myself a little bit more. We can do a bit more of a coil here. I'm going to take my right hand and I'm going to pass that through. So now that whole bundle of rope is resting on my right arm there. Here I'm going to hold the working end tight, and I'm going to spin my arm around like this, keeping these wraps tight around the bundle of rope. So I'll just spin. Here's a spot. I'd like to do at least 3 wraps here, but if you have excessive line, this is an opportunity to eat up some of that length. Or if you needed more length, take a wrap off there. When you're done and you're ready to lock it off, what I'll do is I'll pass a bite through. So I'm going to grab a bite with my right hand, and I'm going to pull that bite through the bundle. I'm going to keep everything tight. Here we have that bite we passed through. I'm going to pass another bite through there, keeping it tight. So what we're starting here now is called a daisy chain, passing a bite through a bite. To finish it off, because if I don't pass the working end through here, it won't be locked off. This works just like a slip knot where that can just pop out. So to finish it off, I want to pass the tail or the working end of the rope through that last bite. That now locks it in place. And then to add some redundancy, we'll put a stopper knot in there just to help prevent that from sucking through. Now with this rope, we can hang it on the shelf, nice consistent length. And one thing that's really important here is you don't want this to be resting on the bottom floor of the shelf, because there could be contaminants under there. Plus this allows more circulation to let the rope dry. That's the rope coil. Another great way to store a rope.
These 2 pieces of rope are called single eye slings. They're called a single eye sling because they have one spliced eye at one end. They are used to attach friction management devices like this Porter Wrap and this block to a tree. To attach a single eye sling to a Porter Wrap, like this one, you want to pass the eye through the sling loop, just in a girth like so. So what we're doing is we pass that eye through the sling loop of the Porter Wrap, that long loop, and then we feed the end of the sling through the eye, all the way through, and then cinch it up like so. To attach a single eye sling to a block like this one, we'll take apart this nice coil. You will undo the pin at the top of the block right here and just put that eye through it like so. And then you will close that block up once again. And redo that whole pin. Always make sure that the eye is through the top of the block, because through the bottom is where the rope will go.
So when we take this rope, running it through the arborist block, one reason we like to use a block instead of a pulley is blocks have bushings, pulleys have bearings. Blocks can take a dynamic load, whereas pulleys don't like that dynamic load. You can cause damage to those bearings. So passing the rope through here, what's really nice also about the block is you get a really good bend ratio. The more you can press a rope, the weaker the fibers get. Nobody ever pushes anybody out of a ditch. It doesn't really work that way. Ropes are meant to work under a pull force. When we compress the ropes, these fibers are under tension, so they're working really well, but these ones are under compression. So we're losing strength. And we most definitely lose strength in the system when we tie knots. Manufacturers will tell you which rope and which knot reduces the breaking strength by how much, and there's been a lot of studies around that strength loss, but you're most definitely losing strength by doing that. An ideal bend ratio would be 4-to-1 or greater, which we definitely see here with this block. Another thing we need to be aware of when we're rigging with these ropes is we have something called cycle to failure. And what that means is the more load we expose this rope to, the more damage we're causing. If we're working in our working load limit or a safe working load limit, we're causing very minimal damage to this rope. But this particular rope, this 9/16 stable braid, this has a breaking strength of 13,300. If we were to put 14,000 pounds in this, we're most likely going to break this rope. But let's say we put just 12,000 pounds in it, we're probably going to cause a lot of fiber fatigue in this rope and damage those fibers. That'd be irreparable damage. Whereas if we put 100 pounds in this, we could do that over and over and over again. I like to think of that like a coat hanger. We can take this coat hanger and do this all day long. We're not going to cause any damage to that coat hanger. But if I wanted to damage it or break it, I would put excessive load on this. So let's see how many excessive bends it will take to break this. So that's 1, that's 2. Now it's getting harder to bend there. We have a fighter. That's 3. Oh, you can feel it. You can feel it. Here we go. Let's see if we get 4 in. It's getting there. Oh yeah, you can just feel it. There's no way we're getting beyond 5. Oh, maybe. It's 5.
Wow.
And these gloves are slippery. Let's see if we can get in there for 6. Oh wow, we're getting, there we go, finally. The point is excessive loads broke that coat hanger there, whereas minimal loads, our safe workload limit, keeps that rope nice and strong. Moving into this porter wrap that Shay had set up here. Again, this is going to be anchored to a tree, and Shay will put the rope in.
So, when you are setting up a porter wrap, ready to rig something down out of a tree, you want to pass the rope, a bite of the rope, through the retention loop, is what this small loop is called, and over the retention pin. Then you will pass that rope around the barrel like so. Each 360-degree loop is equal to 330 pounds. So, right now I can hold 330 pounds of wood up in the sky. Now, if we wrap another one, I can hold 660 pounds. If we wanted to lock this porter wrap off completely so that nothing is moving, we wrap the rope around to completely fill this barrel. You want to completely fill it all the way up so that you don't get any hockles or anything. And then you're going to lock it off on these 2 cleats. We do that by just turning the rope and tying a half hitch on there. And we do one on either side. And then our porter wrap is locked off. Nothing is going to be moving now.
When we're done with these lines, we'll take this rope off here. If we want to store our single-eyed slings, the way we're going to do that is first take it off of this device. Some people will store it on the device, which is fine, but we're going to take it off the device. So we're going to pass that rope back through. And depending on the length, a lot of these slings, if you feel inside where that splice is buried, you'll feel it's really solid right here, and you can actually feel where that splice finishes inside. That's a good spot to create a bite in the rope or to fold it. So we folded this rope over. Now on the spliced end, we're going to start to wrap the rope around. One thing that you'll notice is you could have 10 or 20, maybe 30, I wish I had 30, of these slings, and when you put them all in a bag together, it's really going to get crowded in there and they're going to get tangled and it's going to create a big mess. So by packaging these up nice, neat and tidy, a simple just wrapping around itself keeps everything nice and contained. When we're getting to the end, myself, I will pass this tail through the original bite and through my last wrap here. So this was my last wrap. This is my bite. I'm going to pass it through both of those. So as I come in, really I'm just doing an overhand knot there, cinching that in. And if we have a little bit of tail here like we do now, then we can just pass that through itself one more time just to secure it. And now we have a nice, neat single-eye sling ready for use.